Welcome to the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast. I am Jeremy,
I'm Andy.
and this week we are going to be talking about a crazy little movie called Cuckoo.
Yeah, crazy little movie indeed.
This is a movie that I was able to go into the way I love going into movies, which is knowing very little.
Same.
I had seen basically like a teaser, I think, which did a good job of not showing too much.
It did.
And I walked in going, okay, I get it's kind of like a horror movie. We talked about it kind of has that weird horror movie vibe to it.
And that's really it.
That's really all I knew.
Yeah.
And I was, even the name Cuckoo doesn't give anything away of what it's about. You just hear Cuckoo, you think like, I guess crazy is all you could think.
That's about it.
But that's all I knew. So this movie is about a family that moves to like this remote resort in Germany.
The Alps.
The main character is this teenage girl. She's with her biological dad, her stepmom, and her stepsister. And of course, it's sort of a classic framing for any psychological horror movie where you go to some strange place and as weird things happen, you get, the main character is like, something's not right here.
Yeah.
But because they're set up as somebody who's already kind of unhappy and looking for a way out, and they're talking about supernatural stuff, no one, who's going to believe this crazy stuff is happening. So it's, when we get into more details, we'll talk about why it's kind of a unique and strange movie. Mm-hmm. But just that basic setup is a very basic horror movie, psychological horror movie premise.
Absolutely. Yeah, they didn't break any new ground with the setup, and you don't need to. I mean, it's an effective setup.
Yeah. So I guess we'll back up a little bit and just talk about first things first. What was I'm always curious about this. What was the theater capacity like at your showing of this movie?
So I ended up going actually on Thursday night. So very early, early. I mean, the earliest you can go see it, like the 7:00 Thursday. It was small. I mean, I would say there was, besides me, I'm going to guess 10 to 12 other people in there.
Yeah, and mine was a similar experience. I went on an early Friday showing.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I think, like an 11:30 in the morning showing, and it was probably the same thing. There's probably about 15 of us total in there. Somebody sitting like right by where my purchase seat was. One of those deals where when I purchased it, I was the only person in the row, and I go to, I'm walking up to my seat, and I look out, and there's a very strange, kind of questionable seeming guy sitting like right next to where my seat is, and I go, I'm actually going to go down a couple rows and sit in the vacant area is what I'm going to do. And then I feel like context always colors a little bit how you receive a movie.
Yeah.
It actually, I don't think colored how I felt about this movie, but there was a very obnoxious moviegoer behind me, just in the snacking and the constant moving in their seat. They were one of the loudest people I've ever had in a movie. It's one of those I just wanted to turn around and be like, could you just shut up, please?
Like, are you aware that you're in a movie theater?
Yeah.
And one of the main things you're supposed to do is to be quiet.
Yeah. So
that's tough.
That is it. So my point being not the best environment for watching a movie like this. Like I felt like when I saw Longlegs, I talked about it like it was a very good theater. Everybody was there sort of on the same page. I was probably actually the obnoxious moviegoer. I talked about how I made the mistake of buying popcorn and stuff, and I was like, crap, this movie is so quiet.
It's
quiet, I can't find a moment. But I was very trying to be congenial to those around me. And
that's a bummer because and I guess obviously it helps when there's not a lot of people there. Very quiet theater. No complaints, no getting up and down. Very quiet theater.
Yeah.
It is probably worth pointing out, too, I don't know what this says about this movie or me, but there was numerous people in there going solo. I was solo for this one. Like, Molly would normally go with me. She was in a wedding this past weekend, so she was tied up for several days in a row. I went solo. I think I counted at least 3 or 4 other people that were just there by themselves. So
I think it's very similar.
Worth pointing out.
Similar in my theater.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to assume that means just the best of people are going.
That's
Except
what
for
it
the
means.
weird guy sitting near the seat that I bought, which I could go and do more, but even after the movie, I kind of looked up and
You got some vibes?
He was a strange fellow.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's just say the theater cleared out very quickly when the credits started.
Not so much him?
And I was kind of taking my time. I just wasn't in a rush. And I kind of looked back and saw him and I was like, you know what? I'm going to also hurry out. It's just the two of us now, and I'm starting to feel unsafe.
There you go.
So
okay, I'm sorry you had a disappointing theater experience. That's no fun.
Yeah, that's right. People listening right now are like, "What am I listening to?"
Yeah.
Jeremy and Andy go to movies and talk about the theater experience.
Right.
But we just
it's worth. I think it's important to talk about sometimes the theater experience.
Yeah. So this movie, I don't even really know where to jump in exactly. And you know what? Maybe the first thing we should do is just say, I think it's gonna be impossible to talk about this movie without spoiling some things.
I think so too.
We'll just go ahead and slap the spoiler warning right here at the beginning.
That's a good idea.
So we'll do that. This movie, I think, does a great job of building tension in a lot of the same ways that we talked about with like Long Legs. Not knowing what's going on was great for this movie.
I think so too.
Although, to be honest, after the movie, I'm still not really sure what was going on. But not knowing anything going in.
So that was gonna be one of my things. Where it was like on the rewatchables, they do unanswerable questions. Mine was gonna be, "What is this movie about?" And I'm only kind of kidding when I say that.
Yeah,
but we'll get into that.
Unanswerable questions. You just dropped a script in front.
I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah. So it does a great job building the tension because of the weirdness. The like remote resort where people all around you are acting very strange is always going to be unsettling. Let's maybe talk a little bit about Dan Stevens, who I just want to have this conversation about Dan Stevens first. I don't know how he like became big.
I don't really either.
This is like the year of Dan Stevens, though.
Dude.
Like, I didn't know about him. He was in Abigail.
Yeah.
Then he was in Godzilla x Kong, which,
That's
for better or worse, is
unfortunate.
a huge movie.
Yeah.
And then he's in this. It's just like, it's a name I've heard so much throughout the year. And I see people like online that I follow that are people that love Dan Stevens. They're like, oh, he's so great, so much fun. And I'm like, he's fine. I'm pretty indifferent to Dan Stevens.
Really?
And I don't know, like.
So I would say, like, just based off, I haven't seen Godzilla x Kong, but like just this and Abigail, it's like awesome job playing a dirtball.
He does that for sure.
And like he's so good at being just so like slimy and punchable in this movie. And I think that's a skill. Like, that's good acting in my opinion. I think he does a good job in this movie.
Yeah. I'll say this. All three parts that I mentioned, and I've seen all three, are very different parts. So he's
got some range.
He's got talent.
Yeah.
I guess it's making me have a hard time like putting a pulse on what exactly is this guy.
Well, I agree completely because I was like halfway through this movie until it even clicked in my head who I was watching up on screen, and he's in a lot of this movie.
Yeah.
Because he's so different from his Abigail character. And so, I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah. And speaks German in the movie, and like I you know what? And this is where I could be very ignorant. I'm going, oh, is Dan Stevens like, does he actually German in his background? Does he actually speak German? Maybe he's actually doing a terrible German accent. And like, because I'm so bad with accents, I don't realize real German people are going to listen to this and be like, guys, come on.
That was terrible. Yeah.
I'm watching going like, okay,
Good
maybe
job.
Dan Stevens is, somewhat German or something. And doing a good job of that. But yeah, he is definitely the one that early in the movie puts you in that unease.
Oh, definitely.
For sure. And it's one of those like ones that the only thing that in all the like kind of supernaturally elements of it don't bother me. The only thing that bothers me is it's like, okay, come on, everybody else, you got to be noticing this guy's weird, right?
Like he is just gazing at this.
Barrett's like he's literally talking like a Bond villain almost.
He is, and just like gazing weirdly at this young girl in this movie,
and it's always around her. Like the stepdad or the dad comes in, and he's just like
he's
hanging
just there.
out. And it's
I
like,
know.
At some point, you'd
come
be like,
on, people, this guy's not acting like he should. Yeah.
So, but yeah, he's very, as you said, very friendly is the way he's trying to come across to our main protagonist, played by Hunter Schafer. And I can't think of her character's name off the top of my head. Gretchen. He's very kind to Gretchen, but even Gretchen kind of picks up immediately. Like, you're being very weird like creepy towards me.
Excuse me.
And he hires her to work at the front desk resort, which I think, even at the moment you're going, okay, he's just finding a way to like kind of lure her way out closer to him and away from the family. Yep. She takes the job because she, as soon as they get there, immediately is like, I don't want to be here. And her plan is to get out. Yeah. She wants to just make enough money to be able to afford the trip back to America, where she's from, to get out. So that's essentially just sets up our main conflict is this girl who wants to leave and get out of there, this creepy place she doesn't want to be, and then it just keeps getting creepier and creepier. Yeah. And that's the main crux of the movie. I guess we should also talk about how it's introduced early. She has a stepsister who doesn't speak. Yep. And our like first introduction to Gretchen is her telling these guys that are transporting him, like, yeah, she doesn't talk. It's annoying. Like, you clearly get the idea she doesn't like her stepsister. Right. Gretchen's not necessarily a like real likable protagonist in this movie.
No.
I mean, not like she's terrible. She's just sort of like typical like kind of angsty teenage
teenager
girl who,
which is kind of a cliche, but it's like there's truth in that. I mean,
and as the movie goes on, you learn more of her backstory and like the tragedy that her family had gone through. You go, okay, like I can get more of why she's this angsty teenager, but she is that. She is not always like one. Then the little sister, they do a good job of making her, I don't know, likable, but they try to make it up like the little sister is actually sweet, and we see that again later in the movie when we hear the message that she left through her little recording device through her mom. Yeah, I feel like that's sort of all the main like beats of the movie, besides talking about
really
the actual,
getting into it.
Actual horror element, which even that takes a while to figure out what exactly it is. So the first supernatural, I guess, or like horror element that we really get, if I'm remembering correctly, is her riding her bike home at night from the resort, right?
You get that little tease where the Gretchen character goes into the restroom and someone walks into the restroom, and but that's not. I mean, that's just more like a little tension, and then you get like the cliche of like the dog like barking off into the woods. But you
do get the lady who's vomiting, and it's like clearly not like
a lot of vomiting. In this
not
movie.
Just like a normal upset stomach. Like there's like, hey, something's really off with this lady.
A lot of vomiting going on.
Yeah, which is pretty gross.
Yeah, it is.
And Dan Stevens in his creepy way is all about like, you can't be out at night. Don't, we close down at 10. Let me drive you home.
I'm going to drive you home. Yeah.
And it's like,
golly, dude, you're really, very aggressive.
Yeah. Really weird. Yeah.
But you're right. Probably the bicycle scene is the big.
So then she's riding home on her bicycle again. In a way you like there's like really creepy stuff seeming to happen. And she's like, screw this, I'm just going home. Mm-hmm. She's like, I'm going to leave early from work. And you're like, yes, that makes sense. But she like doesn't even lock up. She just like takes off and
doors
like,
are wide open.
Well, Gretchen, you could have locked a couple doors.
You're not being a very good employee, Gretchen.
So she's riding her bike home, and I can't remember in that scene. Okay, maybe I'm getting out of order here.
That's all right.
I'm trying to recollect. So there's two things that happen. One is that character that shows up in that bike scene.
Yes,
kind of creepy lady chasing her through the woods.
I'm just gonna tell you right now. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that lady is just running, and I guess at first you really don't even know that it's a lady, do you?
Yeah,
I don't
she's kind of ghoulish.
The shadowy figure, we'll say, just boom, comes flying in. Great work by the director, who I have no familiarity with at all.
He was writer/director, so this was just his creative
his project. And I had not he'd done one other movie, right?
Something. Yeah, I looked it up, and I haven't
seen it, hadn't heard of it, nothing. I thought that was great. The camera work and the lighting and the shadows, and you're seeing the Gretchen character's shadow, and then all of a sudden here comes it. Like that was really effective to me.
Yeah, although he did use one of the tricks that drive me nuts in film, and it's very effective, and I know why they have to do it. I hate the like very limited perspective that they'll do. Like, so she looks down and then it keeps showing like her face that she's riding in the dark, and she's just looking down, and you're expecting her to hit something basically because she's just not looking at all, but it's setting up the shadow shot that you're talking about. I'm just like, oh my gosh, look up, show us what's coming ahead of you, please. And that's exactly the tension they're going for.
It is, yeah.
I
thought that worked well with the shadows.
I get very anxious with those very limited perspective shots that are necessary in horror movies.
Probably how they're wanting you to feel.
Yeah. But man, I mean, it, of course, classically used in like the enter a room and rounding a corner, and it won't show you what they're seeing. It's just like, and you're just like, just show us.
Just show me. Yeah.
So what I was starting to hesitate with there when I was saying that was the first real interaction, the other part of it. So you got the lady who's kind of like stalking her throughout the movie. But then you've got this sound, this vibrating sound, this boom, 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 like sound that happens, and it like resets people's actions or memories. It's really unclear.
It's unclear.
But basically, like this sound happens, and then it will like cut to like
you're kind of stuck in this like time loop.
Yeah, and they just repeat, and it's like I don't know if it actually reversed time or if it just like
it messes with your head, or I don't know either.
It's very disorienting even as a viewer, and you're like, I get what they're doing. Like it's showing, like it's kind of hypnitizing, disorienting these people. And so you have the instance where that happens with Gretchen and her little sister in her room when she's playing guitar. Which I think happens before.
I think that's before.
But it tends to happen in conjunction with the lady, creature lady thing stalking her. It's like the noise will disorient you, and then she'll come and get you. I guess is what happens. And I can't remember if that noise happens on the bike ride or not.
I don't think it does because Gretchen has it in headphones.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
that's blocking the noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
which
it's a big part of the movie.
yes.
Yeah.
Um, so we get that. Eventually, we're introduced to another main character, which is this police officer, this German police officer, or at least he identifies himself as a police officer.
Yeah.
We find out later he's not working with the police
Right.
anymore, but he's sort of the, again, in broad horror movie like lane tropes, like he's that like guy who comes in and is like, I'm trying to crack the case and
Yep.
and I'm going to help propel you along in this journey.
Yeah.
And and he's somebody who's got a history at this resort, we find out, and like so it's all a very personal thing for him that he's the one guy who's like, yes, you're right, weird things are going on, and I'll protect you and I'll help you, help me get this crazy lady who's stalking you.
Yep.
And yeah, that, where does that lead? That leads to them basically like
They kind of like form this alliance. They go on a stakeout. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so it's like this is a good time to pause and just be like, this is just a wild movie.
Yeah.
And it just like there are some familiar beats, but this is also just its own unique kind of animal.
Yeah.
So you're like, wait a second. All of a sudden, him and this girl are just a team on a stakeout. Okay. And you kind of just accept it a little bit. But yeah, you get a little bit more, you probably get a little bit of family drama in there somewhere. Because at some point, the younger sister has a seizure.
Yes, which becomes a kind of key
Kind of
part
a thing.
about,
But yeah, but then we do end up eventually, well, man. So Gretchen meets a friend at the
Yes.
resort. They go in their
just remembered
car.
that. They actually, yeah, there's the moment of like, oh, she's actually going to get away. She's not as a viewer, but like in her mind, she's actually getting away from the resort. They're leaving in a car, and then the sound thing happens,
Yep.
and then a car wreck.
Yep.
Poor Gretchen actually just takes a beating.
Gretchen gets whooped in this movie.
Yeah.
The whole movie. So, like, I don't mean to derail, but we haven't even. Did you like this movie? Are you holding off on a reveal?
Can I be? No, I'm not even trying to hold off. I'm not trying to be coy. I'm still trying to understand this movie, and where I kind of land is like, I enjoyed it as a watching experience because it always had me on my toes.
Yep.
And I never knew where it was going.
Yep.
And those types of things that we talk about all the time is great to have in movies.
Yeah.
And so like I definitely am like, it was worth the watch. I think other people should watch it. I just still can't decode enough. Like, so was it good or did it make any sense? So I'm hoping even this what
Talking through it
will help me land on like how I ultimately feel about this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
So it took me about 24 hours of really thinking about it. I think I really like this movie. And I want to get into this eventually. Some of the, like I jokingly was like, what is this movie about? But I think in some kind of weird way, I think it worked as a positive for this movie. And I'll get to that once we kind of finish walking through the movie, what I mean by that.
Yeah. I will say when I walked out of the movie, I thought, I don't know how I feel about this movie, but I bet Andy's going to like this movie.
It did.
It's
won me.
Andy's movie, I think.
It is. And it like, I feel like, I want to be supportive of like good original movies and good original horror. And this is certainly original, and so it's like, you know what? Now, look, I'm not saying like, top 3 of the year. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, for the experience and for this just one-off, just weird little movie, thumbs up from me.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of parallels with this one in Long Legs.
Yeah.
I do. Not to even, we could get into like why one might be better than the other or not or anything, but I just, as far as like, eccentric villain character.
Oh yeah.
You've got a lot of like, I'm not sure what's going on. Great tension building.
Great tension.
Good job by a young lead actress that I'm not overly familiar with. Like,
right.
So there's a lot of like parallels, and of course there's a lot of differences, but
of course.
Like you said, we're in sort of this weird horror.
We are.
Boom.
Yeah.
And these are two staples now. Of
two staples and two, original movies from, unique, interesting directors. So I'm here for it.
Yeah. Here's a question for you that I hadn't really thought about till just now. Does anybody die in this movie before the sort of finale? I don't think anyone. It's a lot of just tension building, but I don't think it Because even
No.
when they're doing the stakeout and the lady attacks at one point, does she actually like? They kind of have as bait, or they're not meaning it to be bait, but they're watching
Yeah.
her coworker and
Yeah.
her boyfriend.
Doesn't that
comes-
lady die?
Does she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she does. All right. And that's part of the problem with this movie where so many things are left. And I think it's intentional, just vague. I mean, she definitely gets attacked.
Yeah.
And
there's definitely the moment of like, they talk about like if she doesn't get turned, like she'll choke on her own vomit or something.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. Maybe you're just left to not know
Yeah.
one way or another. And it's funny too, because this is also a movie, like you think back through it and it's not really, there's a scene towards the end. It's not really a violent movie either. As far, this is not, Jason Voorhees chopping people's head off type of
it's
stuff.
not in a violent nature with
No,
the
it's
yoga
not.
girl on the mountain.
But kind of in the same vein, whereas Longlegs is disturbing and tense and all these things, but it's not really like it's not violent, so to speak. So yeah, that's a good point. I don't think until you get to the finale, we're seeing a lot of death.
Yeah, and even in the finale it's not like, oh, now the finale's here and here comes the rampage of
gore.
death
No.
or something. Yeah, it's a very contained movie.
It
is what I
is.
was to say. Like again, it takes place entirely at this little like
It does.
resort community. Which
You don't
really
venture out.
You really only go into like 3 or 4 buildings in the whole thing too.
The resort, the hospital, the house where Gretchen's family is staying, and
Yeah, and then
where the finale takes
the villain's
place.
house.
Yeah.
That's literally it.
It's a very contained story.
Yeah. So you mentioned the little sister having seizures. It turns out that that's like such a key part of the movie because
Yeah, let's try and talk through this plot.
let's do it. Let's try to figure this out.
So they are breeding humans to create like a new species of humans.
Well, he references at one point it being like an ancient
Is it some kind
being.
of?
I think it's like it's almost like a, what's he call it, a conservation or something like that, or
Yeah.
like just at this place they're trying to keep the lineage of this type of being going,
Right.
that otherwise would be extinct, I think is what it is.
But in doing all this, they really don't give you any backstory.
No.
But that's what I was going to say. Like, I don't want to jump ahead. That actually, in the weirdest way, kind of worked for me. And I'll tell you why. Because so many times in these movies where it's like, okay, something's wrong with this place and there's something sinister going on here, right? We've seen this movie before. Something sinister is going on in this location. And you usually get to a point in the movie, usually, when like 80% through the movie, now it's time for the bad guy to come out and say, let me tell you exactly what we're doing here. And he does this ridiculously long, overly contrived explanation. Basically what those scenes exist in movies to explain to the audience exactly what is going on. And I really liked and I really appreciated the fact that this movie kind of sidesteps that. You don't get the long-winded explanation of here is exactly what is happening, how we're doing it, why we're doing it, what we want to, what our purpose is, and how long we've been doing it.
Yeah.
And even though it might leave you with more questions than answers, I would think I would almost rather have that than have the Dan Stevens character give like okay, now it's time for me to explain everything.
Yeah.
I kind of dug it that it's just like there's some kind of weird breeding situation going on, and we really don't learn a lot of details about it.
Yeah. So, and kind of trying to explain it, Cuckoo, it turns out like has something to do with like the cuckoo bird.
It does,
Which
but that's also kind of vague.
It's, like very vague. I never like quite connected the dots to that.
I know.
But going back to cuckoo just being like a word that people use for crazy.
Yeah.
And I thought it does. You're right. Like the whole thing is like as this girl's going through it, there's probably has to be moments of self-doubt. Like, am I going crazy?
Yeah.
And then everybody around you is just going to think you're crazy if you're describing it. And that's going to be the same thing. Like when these people, whoever might, I guess we've already said spoiler warning, get out of this situation, how would you ever explain this to anybody else?
Right.
What happened at the resort? You see,
Stuff?
yeah, like
Some really weird stuff.
I don't know how to explain it, but it's not, none of it's natural and it's very bizarre.
Now I'm still trying to think through this plot in my mind. So this main woman who's chasing the Gretchen character is like she's obviously a result of all this breeding.
Yeah.
She is after trying to talk this through it.
So she's like
Why is she after Gretchen?
She's the mother of
the
little girl. Yeah.
And I guess maybe she feels like Gretchen's a threat, or
yeah, I guess so. Like that's very.
Everyone's going to be listening to be like,
unclear.
did these guys actually go watch this movie, or are they just
we
making
did.
this all up?
Yeah. And it's definitely not a movie. Like, again, I hope to goodness, I always want as many people listening to our podcast as possible, but I hope nobody's listening to this in lieu of watching the movie, because you're not going to listen to us and be like, well, this sounds
now
like
I really want to go. Like, these guys don't even know what they're talking
movie
about.
to go see. But if you see it and then you're listening to it, I feel like you'll be with us and be like, yeah, I kind of wondered the same thing, or I didn't.
I guess maybe too, like, this movie is not a movie that is as concerned with these. Like I said, we don't get this entire plan spelled out for us. You know, this is more of just like, this movie in and of itself is just like an experience, I guess, maybe. And you're not even, I don't think it was bad filmmaking or bad writing. I don't think as an audience, we are meant to know and understand every beat of this plan that these people are performing.
Yeah. This is a side note, but it just occurred to me, and I just want to throw it out to you. Do you think that this weird horror boom really started with Jordan Peele?
I think
with,
it might
like,
have.
Get Out, and of course Get Out has a lot of, like, you know, social commentary under it and
does.
stuff, but it is kind of a weird horror movie that is very atmospheric, and it doesn't bother over explaining, like, how
I think there's
how does this work? And Us is even more so that way.
Yeah.
And, you know, and again, I think if, you know, you're like, is Cuckoo and Get Out on the same level? No, it's not. Get Out's a level above.
Get Out's
but
better.
I'm just thinking of through, like, the way it's more, it's almost like, I don't want to say more focused. It feels like an insult to say more focused, but more focused on, like, being incredibly well made, well acted, and all that, all the pieces, and not so much on, like,
connecting every
we're
dot.
We're going to make sure the story makes perfect sense for you. And that's what all these movies kind of have.
No, I think
in common.
I think you're exactly right, and I think his influence is creeping out into a lot of horror movies now. You know, just these original ideas, like Jordan Peele does. He does original ideas, and yeah, I think that's a completely fair statement. And like I said, as of so far, I'm here for it because I'm into this stuff. And it's funny how a movie like Cuckoo can do this and pull this off, because so many times I feel like I would be sitting here and going, well, this drove me crazy because it didn't make any sense. But somehow this manages to sidestep that. Because like I said, I think what works here is that they just give you enough information that you just kind of have to buy in and go, okay, there's some kind of weird breeding thing creating or sustaining some kind of weird race of humans. Okay.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think I would rather be left with more questions than answers than I would have to sit and watch a 5-minute scene of Dan Stevens going, now let me tell you, this is why we did this. And, you know, rubbing his hands together and all these kind of played out things that we've seen.
Which, that said, he never goes for one of that speech, but he definitely is a hamming it up.
Oh,
like,
no. He is.
If he had a long enough mustache, I'm pretty sure he would have twirled
he
it. But you could tell he's a guy who was just having so much fun being like this super creepy German scientist.
And I
villain.
feel like it was just such a great touch that the way he kind of summons these is with his little flute. Like, he had to know that's just such a douchey little character trait to have, and I feel like he completely leaned into it.
And even the outfits, the like all white,
oh
kind
my
of
gosh.
flowy, like,
oh yeah. So that's why that was an endearing performance to me.
Yeah. What you're saying, I think, you know, I've often said, in your movies, you can't have both sort of an unbelievable scenario and unbelievable characters. Like, one has to, if you're going to have like very eccentric kind of unusual characters, you have to put them in more real world situations to see how that interacts.
Like a Quentin Tarantino type situation.
Or if you're going to have an unreal like scenario, you've got to put normal people in them to see how, because you have to have something that grounds you.
Yes.
Right. But if you have unreal characters in an unreal situation, like, you're just
anything goes. And there's no
And so I think what makes these movies work is they give you these really bizarre circumstances. You know, this weird resort with this weird creature breeding going on. And then Gretchen is acting like a very normal, angsty teenager who's just freaked out and trying to get through this. Yeah. And even to the point of, like, you don't get a lot of the old horror movie tropes of, like, oh, she's got to fall while running away and stuff like that.
No.
Like, the moments where she needs to step up and be kind of brave and courageous.
She does.
She does. And you're like, well, thankfully, she's acting very much the way I would want or expect a person to act in these situations that are very bizarre.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it can still work.
I couldn't agree more, and I wanted to talk about this because I think, number one, I think it was a good performance. I'm not familiar with Hunter Schafer at all.
I know she's from Euphoria, and apparently, like, everyone who was on Euphoria is just going to have, like, a giant career now.
Yeah,
So.
and I've never seen 1 second of Euphoria.
Either.
I thought she did an excellent job in this movie, and I thought it was such a well-written character for exactly the reasons you're saying. If you've got this weird stuff happening in a weird location, and if you're not going to get the weird stuff explained to you, which clearly this movie doesn't, you're exactly right. You need that character to kind of be the audience avatar of like, well, you need to say that this is weird, and then that character does. So that was the glue that held this movie together, I thought, was the writing of that Gretchen character to be like, this place is weird. I'm out of here. And that also was a great little twist on the something's wrong here genre, where it's like sometimes that will stretch, like it stretches that believability for too long. And you're like, too many weird things have happened. These people would be gone. Yeah. And that was such a smart twist in this, not a twist, but just a smart beat of this movie is like pretty much from the time she gets there, this character just wants to leave.
Yeah.
And I loved like she doesn't literally say this, but basically it's like, hey, this place is weird. I'm out of here. You should come with me, but if not, I'm still leaving. Yeah. And I just thought that sidestepped so many of the nitpicks you could have about this movie. And I thought that was really smart.
Definitely. So getting back to trying to understand the movie.
Oh, yes. We're all over the place.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's fine.
So it's a Cuckoo podcast.
It is.
So, the creature lady who's throughout the movie kind of stalking Gretchen, stalking other people, is, I think they're implying the actual mother of her stepsister. And the way it works is they don't actually get pregnant. They have to, like, have their eggs raised in a human host.
Yes.
So the point is that Gretchen's dad and stepmom had visited there
8 years ago.
8 years prior, whatever, yeah.
And clearly that's where the stepsister comes from.
Yes.
They were
memory wiped or something where they don't remember that what happened was, they were hypnotized and this child was implanted.
And so then they're lured back.
Yeah, they're lured back. I guess they're architects, so they're
supposed to design
they're
a building,
designing, a new part of the resort. And yes, but the people want at first it's kind of a misdirect because at first when Gretchen shows up, you're like, oh, they're after Gretchen.
Yeah.
And then it turns out like
they're really not.
Yeah, like clearly he has some sort of intentions for Gretchen. We talk about all the creepiness, but they're after the younger sister.
And it's more like Gretchen's just in the way.
Yeah.
Like she's in the way of this plan. We haven't gotten to whether it's wipe her memory or whatever, but she's like a bump in the road.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they want the younger sister because she is this creature.
Like the next
she doesn't
generation,
talk
I guess, of
she's
this
part of this creature. And we learn that the creatures have this the sound that you hear, the disoriented vibrating sound comes through the throat. They do this little like pulsating thing with their throat, and her sister can't talk, but she does the pulsating throat
and her ears
thing.
wiggle.
Yeah. And then it culminates in a scene where you've got Dan Stevens is trying to destroy all the evidence because he knows like kind of the gig is up.
The gig's up. Yep.
Once
now I just got to save my own tail and
so he's cleaning house.
Yes.
By eliminating you and his coworkers.
Yes.
Trying to burn everything.
And by cleaning house, you mean shooting his coworkers with a shotgun.
Exactly.
Yes.
We've got the ex-cop is back, and
whose wife fell victim.
Yes, and he's just wanting to complete his revenge.
He just wants revenge.
He's cleaning house in a different way.
He is.
And then you've got Gretchen who's just trying to get out, and then
she has decided, you know what? I'm going to rescue my stepsister.
And that's again where you get a real character because you're like, I get that she didn't like her stepsister,
but it's like, you know what? This is my stepsister.
I don't want her to die.
Exactly.
I want to get her out of here with me.
I thought that built nicely to so you got the Dan Stevens character, the ex-cop, Gretchen, and then the stepsister. And even though the stepsister is just kind of an aside in all this, but it's like you have 4 characters, and even though it's been a confusing path.
We can throw in the 5th because there's the creature lady there too.
Yeah.
So
you got these 5 characters, and it's kind of all culminating in this kind of a chase, and there's multiple like sub chases going on. I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
I like that.
And again, being the kind of movie it was where you would truly not be surprised if anything happens.
Yeah.
And I love that when you feel like your main character is actually in peril, because when you're watching a movie and you're going like, well, I know she's going to make it out of this. then you don't care. But this is the kind of movie where I'm like,
I don't know who's coming out of this.
literally, like, I wouldn't surprise me if if it was the type of movie that's so strange that, like,
they kill the Gretchen
suddenly
character.
she dies and the movie just sort of shifts its focus for the last 20 minutes or something.
Agreed completely.
And so that gives you a lot more tension.
It does.
As a film watcher.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have no clue the fate of anybody in this scenario. It's like anyone could live, anyone could die. I don't know, and that's, kudos to the filmmaker for getting us to that point and it feeling natural.
Yeah. All right, so super spoiler warning here because we're getting into the final climactic things. First off, I already can't remember how the creature lady is killed. I remember her being down and the wig coming off.
Oh, I remember, and it's awesome. Okay.
What am I forgetting? I'm
Let me
blanking on it.
I'm going to back up for just a second. So one thing I figured out that I love is, so we get this chase and they're in basically like a library, like archive type situation. There's a bunch of shelves.
Yeah.
Always effective in movies when someone pushes over the shelf and then they all just go tumbling.
Yeah.
I just thought that looked great. So Gretchen's buried underneath this shelf and rubble. The creature's hovering above her.
That's right. Yeah.
Gretchen grabs a knife, and then we do get a pretty violent moment. Stab. It's like we get this great point of view of Gretchen basically, and this creature's moving all the stuff, and all of a sudden Gretchen just gets her with the knife, and then the blood sprays everywhere.
Another thing I'm a sucker for in movies is characters who have to push themselves through something like extreme in order to accomplish their goals. So something painful. So Gretchen is having to cover her ears because she knows that's the key.
Yeah.
She's got a broken arm that's in a sling. So she's pinned her there. She's broken arm here and covering her ears, but she can't reach the knife. And she decides rather than uncovering my ears, that's not safe. She has to start reaching with her broken arm and she's in pain. And you're like, I just love moments like that where it's like,
it's effective.
I've got to do this thing that is going to really hurt, but it's the only thing I can do.
Yeah. And so I thought that worked really well. I loved just that visual of all those shelves tumbling. And so the creature comes stumbling back after that. But then I think she just falls dead eventually.
Yeah. It's kind of like it's like a
fake
out on the trope
out,
of it's one more gasp.
Yep.
And she just, and then the wig comes off.
Yep. And then, so this is another unanswerable question. That creature falls, the wig comes off, and Gretchen just kind of stares at that creature. I almost wondered if it's meant to imply that creature was her mom.
Yes, I had the same questions.
And
it was such an odd thing. And then, because she even says something shortly after, "Mom is dead."
Yeah.
That was
and it's
very strange way to say it.
Once again, kudos to this movie for not spelling everything out for us. We don't know.
Yeah, I've said it before about other movies, and this is definitely another example of one where I got done and I said, I need to go home and look up YouTube videos of ending explained of Cuckoo.
For sure.
And see somebody smarter than me break down, be like, here's what it was implying, here's what you missed, because that same thing, I had the same thought, is it implying it's her mom?
I felt like it was, but maybe that's just what, I don't know. And we'll never know probably, unless there's some kind of Easter egg hidden in there somewhere. And then we get this I thought it was a really great scene where, so the Dan Stevens character and the ex-cop, they're basically at a stalemate with their guns.
Yeah, Mexican standoff.
Yeah, Mexican standoff. And then Gretchen's just like, all right, here I come. And she's using the kid, she's trying to keep the kid safe, but also kind of using it to her advantage.
Yeah, because she's facing the kid towards Dan Stevens, who wants to preserve her, not kill the kid. But the cop wants to kill the kid.
Yeah.
And then she's protecting the kid from the cop.
Yeah.
But hiding behind the kid. So you got
it's
the
really smart.
Yeah. And she's just creeping through.
Yeah. And then once again, things are left ambiguous. You hear, or Dan Stevens and the cop character have their guns pointed at each other.
And the hypnotic sound that the sister covers her ears and makes the sound to freeze them.
And then you hear gunshots, but you don't see the results of those gunshots.
Yeah.
So this movie, and I admire it for it. It leaves a ton of things just unresolved. And not if you've written a good movie and you're making a good movie, not everything needs to be wrapped up in a nice little package. You go see Twisters, let's say. Twisters is a movie that I need that to everything just to be wrapped up in a nice but with a nice bow on it at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need ambiguity and anything like that.
You just need the hero and the lady to get together and kiss at the end.
And that, exactly. Yeah, which you don't get, but you know what I'm saying? And then it's like, that's why I think I have such a love for these small independent horror movies, because it does feel like they're just, it allows for just more creative freedom, because they're not working within any constraint or, pre-existing expectations. Mm-hmm. And so whereas I can understand how it might be frustrating to some viewers to be like, I don't know what happened. I don't know. To me, that was all a positive of this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, okay, when you really break down what this movie's about, you're like, German scientist is trying to conserve a
weird
cuckoo bird creature lady. And you just go like,
it makes no sense.
Yeah. None. And then you realize like, it's really not the point.
It's not.
And again, the point is like, it's these creative filmmakers are going, I'm just going to put you in this world, and
you just kind of have to buy in.
We'll brush through that kind of quickly. We'll have Dan Stevens kind of explain it briefly in a German accent, and
while playing a flute.
Other than that, it's going to be about just like putting you on edge and unease, and having you navigate this strange situation.
Yep. And so if you're looking at it from that perspective, a success in my opinion, and that's why I say, 2 thumbs up. Whatever cliche you want to say for saying you like a movie, it succeeded to me. Yeah. And then you get your, not the cliched happy ending of like, boy, everything just worked out perfect for these characters. I mean, Gretchen's beat to a pulp. The sister is indeed one of these.
Yeah, it's one of those like,
it doesn't all just work out perfectly.
What happens the next day or into the future? Yeah,
but and we'll never know, because I guarantee you this is not meant for a sequel.
And we don't want it.
We don't want it.
We want the unanswered question.
But you do get left with at least a taste of a happy ending.
Yes.
Just in the sense that Gretchen survived. She did do the right thing and come back for her sister. And, obviously their goal was hopefully to get far, far away from where they are.
Yeah.
But it doesn't even bother to explain to you what happened to the dad and the stepmom.
No.
You don't even get you have no idea.
Yeah. Did you expect there to be like one last thing right at the end that was like tipped its hand like, but things are gonna go bad? Like I expected like maybe one little shot of like although
you get a shot of her ears twitching.
You get her ear twitching.
You know what? At that point, I didn't, and cause for a couple reasons. Like number one, I just thought like, even though I'm not familiar with this filmmaker, just from the way this movie has been made, I felt like he's probably just a little bit better than that to feel like, well, I've got to kind of throw in the one last thing.
Yeah.
So now I wasn't, but at the same time, like you said, in a movie like this, you're like, who knows? Mm-hmm. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Dracula burst through the car. It's like, at this point, it's like, who knows with this movie? So I really wasn't expecting it. I just kind of figured like, it feels like this movie's maybe just a little bit above that.
Yeah.
But no, like I left the movie satisfied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun game to play. We'll just go through and be like, replace a character in various movies with Dracula.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just Dracula now.
And at this point, I swear I would just have been like, all right, fine. Yeah. Well, Dracula's here. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, weird. Doesn't play by the rules. Is not interested in answering all the questions for you. But I really enjoyed myself. And I just want to say one more time, it's just tip of the hat to Hunter Schafer, which, you acknowledge, like a main thread throughout this movie is that character gets the tar beaten out of her. And, that can't be easy to play as an actress. Like you have to play beat up and broken arm, and you spend most of the movie with this bandage wrapped around your head. And I thought she did a really good job with all that.
She's also she has a very unique look to her.
Very unique look.
Like I'm trying to think of the right way to say this, because she's the type of girl, she probably actually does like modeling in real life. Like, so she's not an attractive girl, but she just has a different look. Like,
it's a unique look.
A lot of like these leading girls, they have a very like specific, like clean, like perfectly symmetrical. And something about her, like her face kind of narrow. It's like her nose, like it's just a little different look.
Different look
that stands out.
Yep.
Like it's very memorable. Like I feel like when you see her, you're gonna be like, I know that's Hunter Schafer. That's a distinctly Hunter Schafer look.
Absolutely.
As opposed to
absolutely, and she's just seemed like the right person. Like she was definitely up for the task of, hey, you have to be beat up this entire movie. It's like right after she has that car wreck, her face, like one side of her face was like clearly swollen. Like her eye was like puffy, and I don't know, like it was just the right fit for this character of having to be beaten up during the whole movie.
Yeah. And even having to have the like head bandage on for
Yeah.
like half the movie, you know.
That has to be, you know, that has to, you have to be able to pull that off to where it's not like you're not like laughing the whole time, like this character just looks stupid, and it's not a distraction. It just kind of becomes a part of the character, and well done. And like I said too, the writing also did her a lot of favors because it was a well written character. Like, I do want to shout out really quickly just the line where she is talking to the Dan Stevens character in front of her dad and stepmom. And Dan Stevens is like, no, your family has always belonged here. And then Hunter Schafer goes, that's such a weird way to say it. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff I just want to applaud because she is saying what the audience is thinking. It's like you said, where it's like, normally you'd be like, people, take note. This is so weird. And I love that the Hunter Schafer character points that out directly in front of everybody. Like, that was so weird.
Yeah. And figuring out things like, oh, it has to do with the sound. So have headphones on, play music, do anything you can to block the sound. Her figuring that stuff out at a reasonable pace in the movie where you're not sitting there watching as a viewer going, well, just cover your ears, you know,
and also, like you said, at a reasonable pace, not figuring out so quickly that you're like, well, how did they know that?
Yeah.
Like, how would they know that? Like, you're right. All well done. And, you know, you got to give credit. Like you said, wrote and directed this movie. The name escapes me right now.
I looked it up because I want to make sure we shout him out and give him credit. Tilman Singer is his name.
So kudos to him. I'll be curious to see what he does next.
Yeah, me too. God, this is one of those movies where I'm like, again, if you just listen to this,
we probably sound insane.
We sound insane. You're probably thinking, what is this movie and why would I want to watch it? This is one of those movies I'm going to want to talk about with other people. Mm-hmm. That said, I am curious about, maybe you know about how it's done so far this weekend in the box office.
I do. I made a point to look at that. Okay. So it made $3 million this weekend.
Okay.
Which, you know, for what it was and it did not have I actually had to go to the AMC theater, whereas normally I would go to the Savoy IMAX because it wasn't even playing at the Savoy theater.
Interesting.
So yeah. So I think it's considered I think it's going to be one of those movies that ends up probably $8 to $10 million domestic box office, but probably only cost $1.5 million.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's all relative when you're measuring box office and stuff. I think it'll be a success, and from what best I can tell, people are like, you know what, I like this movie. Like, I'm not seeing like best movie of the year type reviews, but I'm seeing like, you know what, people like this movie.
Well, and that's one thing I'll say for it is I think it's the type of movie that is going to attract its audience.
I think
it's going to have a high hit rate with the people who do see it, because the people who are going to go see it, I mean, the type of people who would like this movie.
Yes.
What I wonder about is, like, as I talk about, I would love to talk with people about this movie because it's so strange.
So strange. But
it's not one that, as I think about the people in my life, like, there's a lot of people who I would go, you're the one who I think should watch this to appreciate it. I know, like I said, if you hadn't seen it, I'd be a very easy, like, Andy, watch this movie because you appreciate movies like this. But my friends who don't watch a ton of movies, and they, like we talk about time, they usually want just more like simple, like straightforward movies. I feel like a lot of my friends would watch this and be like, what in the world did you have me just watch?
So like, let's use Woody as an example, who was on this podcast. Yes. Yeah. I think if we recommended Woody, who was on our war movie draft, I think he would walk away and look at us and go, what did you just tell me to do?
Yeah. Like, that was the weirdest movie I've ever seen, and very strange. So I don't know, maybe in some way this like strange horror, weird horror genre as we've deemed it is sort of for people who watch a ton of movies and like we just need something different.
Yeah.
Like hit us.
And it definitely checks that
unique.
box.
Yeah. And maybe for people who don't watch a ton of movies, it's just too different.
Yeah.
And they're like, I just need more sort of the usual.
You're right. And it's funny because it's like as a lover of movies, you know, I'm not going to be upset if someone did give me the Woody response and go, guys, that was just too far out for me.
Yeah, that's what I would expect.
I mean, you go, yeah, fair enough. That's a fair point. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think and I do wonder if this won't, like we've talked about on here before, become what I'm just going to start calling them like TikTok movies. Like Molly, you know, that's how she learns about she's my 18-year-old daughter. That's how she learns about a lot of movies. Oh, this has got some buzz on TikTok. So, and really what that means is like, this is becoming a movie that people want to talk about and want to debate about and want to show clips of. Like Longlegs pretty quickly became, I would call it a TikTok movie.
Yeah.
Where people were theorizing about it. oh, hey, did you notice in the background this? Or it's just got enough appeal to a younger audience. Like they love to show, Molly shows me TikToks all the time of the Longlegs character singing. So it's like something has struck a chord, with people. And I wonder if this won't be the same way. Like I can already imagine TikToks of the Gretchen character with her head wrapped up and just all this weird stuff going on.
And I could picture people splicing in Dan Stevens playing the little flute, and then with different things happening after it. Yeah.
Oh,
like
yeah. So, yeah, and truly, I hope movies like this do find an audience. Because like I said, I would be hypocritical if I said I didn't want original movies to succeed. Because how many times have we complained about Godzilla times Kong and these just lifeless, dull franchises that are just getting, how many times have I griped about Transformers and they just keep making them? So obviously this has nothing in common with Transformers, but my point is, whereas that is just boring, recycled IP, this is fresh and original and exciting to me. So I hope it does find an audience and succeed.
Yeah. Which, just kind of speaking of movies coming out, we saw Cuckoo. That was the movie of this weekend that we decided to see. We did not see, what's it called? It Ends With Us or something. The Blake Lively.
Which apparently we're the only ones because that made a ton of money.
Yeah, I did not guess that was going to be a big hit.
Huge hit.
And it's become a big hit. And we talked about it a little beforehand. I think it's was set up by there not being a lot of romance movies coming out in a while. Not any that I can
can't
think
even
of.
remember the last one.
So I guess they ran out of Nicholas Sparks stuff for a while, and now we're going to have a run of Colleen Hoover. But
I guess so.
I'm embarrassed I even know the names that I just said. But,
yeah,
it's all right. It's okay. And then we talk about Borderlands coming out, and that one is apparently just, it's just getting the worst kind of reviews. It's one of those movies where it seems like the most fun part of the movie is just how
much fun you can make
how creative people are getting and how they're dissing it in their reviews. We talked about, you sent me the one that said what do you remember how it goes?
It said Borderlands is an embarrassment to video games, movies, and carbon-based life forms.
See, now that's clever.
Yeah. But, it's one of those movies that people are really enjoying just beating up on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a moment where I thought, hey, maybe we go see Borderlands to have another Madam Web style episode. But there's another movie coming out next weekend that we would rather go see for more positive experience, I hope, which is Alien Romulus.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I'm just sitting here talking about, boring, repetitive franchises, and this is like the 7th Alien movie or something, but...
Yeah. So there's a time and a place for those movies.
There are.
And sometimes it's as simple as, hey, there was 2 really good Aliens movies. And as you said, there's been like 5 not
mediocre
so great ones. And there's a longing for like,
can we get back to this?
When they show the Alien Romulus trailer, which again we talk about,
gives away way too much.
It at least seems in tone much more familiar to the first one specifically, but the first 2.
Yes.
As far as and so it makes you go like, oh man, yeah, I could get,
I'm at least going to give this a shot.
Yeah. So we're going to go see Alien Romulus this weekend.
We are. I think I might try and IMAX it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the big vastness of space and all that stuff would look cool up on the IMAX. So
yeah, I think and I'll try to rewatch Alien and Aliens this week if I can in preparation for it.
I have watched them both enough in the last couple weeks for the both of us. I've been on this huge that's another cool thing when something like Alien Romulus comes out. It has helped me kind of recapture like my love for Alien and Aliens. So I've been watching both of them a lot this week. I was actually watching Aliens this afternoon.
And it's really nice though of this movie to say like, okay, it's taking place between those two movies.
Between the two movies, yeah.
Because it makes me feel like not only do I only want to watch those 2, it makes me feel like I only have to rewatch those 2. I don't have to bother with the other 5 that aren't as good. And I don't have to be like, well, but I got to rewatch them in order to know, what's happened between those and this movie. It just kind of pushes those away and says, don't worry about those.
Don't worry about those.
Watch the 2 good ones.
We're going to take place between the 2 good movies, yeah.
And in fact, maybe what I'll do is watch Alien Romulus,
and then come home and watch Aliens.
So I can give it the scope and sequence.
Nice.
Right?
I'm really excited to talk the Alien universe with you next week.
Yeah, Aliens I watched actually this summer.
Oh, nice.
just on a night. I kind of knew it was coming, and I was like, well, what if I don't have time to watch? So I'll go ahead and watch it now because I had nothing to watch.
So should we do an entire podcast as the Bill Paxton character from Aliens, who's just whining the entire movie, and it's incredible?
He is so good in that movie.
Oh my gosh, we'll talk about that next week.
But Alien, I probably haven't seen in 10 years, so I need to revisit that one. You got to see it.
I got to see it in the theater, and now I'm so glad I did. Now that Alien Romulus is almost here, I'm so glad I did.
Yeah. But I regret missing out on that one.
Yeah.
But it's nice because that will continue our streak. That'll be week 6 in a row of a new movie.
A record for sure.
Yeah.
And
so I'm looking forward to continuing that streak.
Yeah, and I guess just to not to be repetitive, but it's like I said, don't let our the wildness of our conversation today stop you from going to check out Cuckoo. Like, it's a hard movie to talk about just in a straightforward way. It's a hard movie to sort through, but it doesn't mean it's not worth checking out. So if you're a listener and you want to see you just go into it like, this is a weird movie. Like, make no mistake about that, but don't let that scare you away. It's still a good watch.
Yeah, and you know what? I think I still haven't landed on a solid conclusion, but our conversation has helped push me a little more
into the positive.
Yeah.
And I really walked away, I guess, not having I just didn't have a lot of negatives. Other than just like, this is a very strange movie that is not at all interested in spelling things out for me.
Yeah.
But, good performances, atmosphere, cool setting. That's important for a horror movie. The setting is important. German Alps. Okay, cool. Like, and even though they don't really utilize like the mountains and stuff, but just knowing that you're there was effective to me. So
yeah, just knowing this teenage girl can't just get away.
Yeah.
You're too reclusive
of
a place.
You are in this place. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was a really fun conversation. I figured it probably would be, but I was nervous because this is the least prepared I felt. Like, I had no idea what to even bring to this conversation. Usually I come in with a bunch of notes, and I was like, you know what? We're just coming in. We're just going to try to figure this movie out together.
Let's just figure this movie out together. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think, maybe I might feel differently when I listen back to it and be like, oh my gosh,
man, we were a mess. All over the place. I know, right?
But Andy, you know what? We did exactly what this podcast is supposed to be. We just
talked movies.
We talked movies.
I'm just sitting there thinking, so next week will be our 6th in a row. 6 new movie in a row.
Yeah.
And we haven't been, we've been positive about all of them. Yeah, right? I was more positive about Long Legs than you were, but neither one of us were like, you know what? We just did not like, because it was what? Yeah. Long Legs, Twisters, Deadpool.
Wolverine.
I'm missing something. Cuckoo. What are we missing? How am I blanking on this?
Somehow it's probably something obvious. It usually is if it's a new movie that we.
Oh my gosh! Why did I bring this up and now I don't even know? Anyway, I was just thinking like it'd be really cool if it was like 6 in a row and 6 we were all fairly positive about.
Yeah, that'd be.
Or is it just 5?
It's got to be 6. I'm getting to the bottom of this.
Okay, you get to the bottom. I will do a Dan Stevens impression and play the flute for a couple minutes while you look.
Please do.
Nah, I couldn't do it if I wanted to.
Why am I not able to find my notes app all of a sudden? Is it just gone? Did it disappear?
Oh no. This is why. This is the argument for being prepared, where we were just unprepared this week. I swear I'm missing something. Twisters.
Oh, it changed the color on the app. I'm not going crazy, people.
Okay.
And so the app looked different, and so it doesn't matter. Everyone's like, who cares? Why are you?
Yeah, everyone already stopped listening because we just awkwardly are trying to kill time while you get to the bottom of how many movies in it.
Trap.
Oh my gosh.
Trap. We did it last week. We forgot Trap.
I'm so embarrassed by that. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Well, you know what? This was one of those weeks that felt like a month.
Yeah.
Getting back to work and in service and all that.
Yeah.
That saying we did Trap a week ago sounds
feels
like well, we just
2
did
months.
It.
But my point being is like, that's a good thing for us to be able to do 6 new movies in a row. And hopefully we weren't just downright negative about any of them.
Right.
And we had different critiques and nitpicks, but none of them were like thumbs down, huge miss.
Yeah.
So, that's a win for movies.
Yeah. And just continuing, again, I am kind of shocked when I hear people who, for a living, talk about movies. We talk about the Big Picture podcast stuff, and they talk about like 2024 not been a great year for movies, and I'm like, that's not been my experience.
Mine either.
I've actually been really pleased with movies this year.
I'm so happy with not only the quality of movies I've seen, but the wide variety of movies I've seen.
Yes.
You know, when I have a year when I can say I enjoyed Cuckoo and Twisters,
Yeah.
that's a win to me. Because, I mean, talk about the opposite ends of the
Right.
spectrum.
You can enjoy Deadpool and Wolverine, and it ends with us.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. The Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds romance.
That's right.
Their household's doing well this weekend.
Yeah.
Because Deadpool made like another $50-something million, and I think it crossed $1 billion. So
That's wild.
it is wild.
But good for it.
Good for it.
This is probably a good time for us to wrap up because I can feel the allergies getting back to my eyes. I just want the viewers to know.
I noticed this morning you were having some.
I did not wake and bake. This is allergies. This is an allergy problem.
Allergies.
I will say when I went to see the movie, I was also having trouble with my eyes and allergies.
Yeah.
And I got my ticket, and the girl at the register was like, "Anything else I can get for you?" And I was like, "No, just the ticket." And I think she was surprised I didn't want snacks.
Yeah. She thought you were just
I looked like somebody
toasted.
who probably wanted to order snacks.
Yeah.
I was like, you know, and if you say like it's just allergies, people are like, yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
I noticed you this morning. So, you know, we pull back the curtain every once in a while. We go to church together. And I looked over at one point and I was like, uh-oh, Jeremy's having allergy problems.
Yeah.
You just got done rubbing your eyes.
I literally had to sit there with my eyes closed. And then as soon as Woody was done preaching, I got up and took off to DG, got some eye drops, which I'm very bad at putting eye drops in.
Yeah.
I basically have to douse my eyes and let some of it get in because I'm just terrible.
Everything in every instinct you have is to close your eyes.
Exactly. So we've really gone off the rails.
Oh my gosh. Well, like you said, it's just a Cuckoo themed episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, at one point we started talking about Dracula.
We did. Yeah, and how much fun he'd be to just put in random movies.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of all the movies I've seen this year, what the most fun for Dracula to just pop up in would have been.
That's a great question.
You know, it could have been in Trap, like with Shyamalan's twist,
that's
where
the
Josh
twist.
Hartnett's actually a vampire.
I was going to say, or the twist is they're literally not even after him as a serial killer. They're catching Dracula.
Dracula's also at the concert. He loves Lady Raven. He's just a huge Lady Raven guy. And he's got his cell phone out like for the light. And okay, we have.
And Dracula is ticked that he wasn't the dream girl called on stage.
He's so mad. He's just furious. Yeah, man, we've jumped the shark. We're just all over the place now. Allergies. We're just gonna blame allergies. Yeah. So, if you're a follower, do your Alien homework this week because we'll be talking a lot about, like I said, you know, of course, Alien Romulus, but you know, we can hopefully have the bigger Alien conversation too.
Yeah, and let's do this. We haven't done a Mount Rushmore in a while. Let's do a Mount Rushmore of Alien movies, not just the Alien franchise. I mean, just any movie with aliens in it.
Love it.
Okay,
let's do it.
All right. Well, audience, thank you for sticking with us through this wild and crazy ride.
We are okay. We are of sound mind. Don't think that we have gone cuckoo. Like we're of our right minds. It's just a hard movie to talk about without it getting weird and random and off topic. So.
Absolutely. Next week, Alien Romulus. We'll see you guys then.
See you next week.